Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate that immensely. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you have a suggestion or a question about the video, or some constructive criticism, or you just want to tell me how you do things, or just say hi, I love to hear those kinds of things, so leave me a comment if you'd like. At the last gem show I went to, I picked up a pair of matching cabochons that are kind of long and rectangular, and they are marcasite in some sort of agate, and they're really interesting looking stones. And so I thought I'd make a pair of earrings out of them today. And one of the things I like to do a lot is I like to kind of pair geometric patterns with patterns in nature that are more randomized, and I think the contrast of those two things is really fun. And so I think these ones are going to have some geometric pattern to them. We'll see how they look, but I think they'll be cool. I usually make dangles, but today I think I'm going to make some posts, so these will be more fixed in place. Before we get too far in, though, I need to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters. I really value their support, not only the financial part, but also the great community that they've built over there. It's a great group of really talented people, and I really enjoy their company. So the other group is my YouTube subscribers, and I appreciate them as well. We just passed 19,600, and that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. I do also really appreciate the nice comments. It's nice when people let me know that I've done something good for them, and that makes this all worthwhile when I find out things like that, because at heart I'm a teacher, and it's nice to know people are getting something from what I do, so thanks for that. I do also appreciate the financial contributions like the Buy Me a Coffee and the Super Thanks. So thanks for that. Let's get started on this pair of earrings. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks that you can get on the merch store. It's a great tool for keeping track of your projects. I draw up my ideas in here, and I find that since I started doing that, it helps me to remember how I did things in case I want to go back and do it again. One of the things I like about it is it's got this nice dot matrix pattern in the background, and that helps me to draw things a little more symmetrically because I'm not a great freehand drawer. So, but get yourself one of those. It's a great way to keep track of your stuff. This is today's project, and I have, like I said, I have these two kind of cool, they're like yellow and red and sort of agate stuff with some different abstract shapes, and then they have these little fans of marcasite crystals in it that almost look organic, and I really like them. So it's random enough to where I think it'll pair really well with some geometric stuff. So I was drawing up some things, and one thing I wanted to do is I originally was going to do a circle on top as kind of the place for the post to connect. But the more I thought about it, that just, you know, I've done some things that I didn't love the way they came out when it was all parallels or circles all in a straight line like that. And so I thought, let's change it up and let's do some half circles offset to each other. And then maybe do a half circle kind of top on it too. And I think that'll be kind of fun to do. So this I'm going to do sort of an open back hollow form, and I'm going to make it out of flattened 12 gauge square, which starts out at 2.01 millimeters, and I think I flattened it to about a millimeter. And then made kind of a half circle shape and mounted some 26 gauge sheet on top to give it kind of a, like half of a pill kind of a look. The wire on the inside here is going to be 16 gauge round wire for both the step for the stone to sit on as well as these extra designs in there. And that's 1.3 millimeters, I believe. And the bezel I'm going to use is 28 gauge, which is 0.33, I believe. Yeah, 0.33 millimeters. And I usually use tall stuff. I use 3/16, which is 4.76 millimeters. So let's make a bezel for one of these. and then I'll probably just do one on camera and one off camera. These are pretty close to the same. So. Alright, so let's make a bezel. If you're brand new to silversmithing, I probably wouldn't do bezels for stones with sharp corners like this until you've got a few bezels under your belt that are round or oval. Those are a little bit easier to start with. Probably would rate this as a low, intermediate, or an advanced beginner project, although I guess we'll find out. When I do a stone that has corners like this, I'm not going to end the bezel on a corner. That's never a good idea. So I'm going to kind of estimate so it ends up kind of in the middle of this side over here. And we'll just make a little bend starting right there. I want this to be reasonably snug, but not so tight that when I go to put the stone in, I'm going to break a corner off or something. Nobody wants that to happen. I don't have a backup stone for these two, so if that happens, we're kind of if that happens, we're kind of out of luck, I think. So. I almost said something YouTube wouldn't approve of. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use primarily hard silver sheet solder. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a dropper bottle. My torch is a Silversmith model. It's an acetylene air torch, and it draws in atmospheric air through there to mix with the gas. And it's a great torch for silversmithing. It's just about the right temperature for me. I'm having a little trouble with my words today, I think. So when we solder these together, we want these ends to be pushing together so that as it relaxes under the heat, as it usually does, it doesn't pull apart. So if you bend them past each other a little bit and then pull them back and pop them into place, that usually works pretty well. Okay. When you're heating a bezel like this, you got to heat the entire thing. Oops, I missed putting it right on the crack, so let's scoot it over a little bit. It's tempting to focus just where the solder is when you're soldering at first, but you really got to get the entire piece up to the soldering temperature for it to flow nicely. And that is one of those universal things that as you continue to learn how to do this, it'll become automatic and it'll make sense more. What really goes on is that silver loses heat so fast that if you're heating over here, it's getting really hot and this side's bleeding off heat, so it has trouble getting the solder to actually flow before the silver starts to melt. And that's easy to do at first. So if you heat the entire thing, and it gets up to that hard silver solder is 1450 degrees flow temperature in Fahrenheit, which I think I have that temperature in Celsius is 773.5. if you want it to really stick to the metal, you want the metal to melt the solder, not the flame, if that makes sense. So you get the metal up to that temperature, and then the solder will just flow and stick it together. That was one of those things that once that kind of sunk into my brain, everything became much easier and I started to melt a lot fewer things. I think we did pretty good on the size there. So I'm just going to do a little bit more shaping to get that straightened up. Then we're going to create a little ledge on the inside on a 16 gauge round wire. You could use square wire, or you could use a thinner gauge, or even a thicker gauge, but you're going to cover up some of the pattern on the back of the stone if you do that. Okay, so to get a sharp bend in this, I'm probably going to file a little notch wherever there's a corner. So I really want to get them pretty close to right where the corner is going to bend. And sometimes I'm good at that, sometimes I'm not. We'll do our best. But again, I'm not going to end this on a corner. So let me find my marker. Sometimes it helps me if I make a mark where I want it to bend. And if I file a notch for the corner of my file right here, so it's kind of a 45-degree notch. It's actually a 90-degree notch if you look at the way the angle is. But once you get it part way through, then you can bend it sharply there. Get a lot sharper corner than you could if you didn't do that. And now we can kind of put it here and then figure out where the next one goes. I think for this one I'm going to have to use my smaller file because it's kind of in a spot. Let's hold it tight up against this side and then we'll make another mark right here. It feels like it fits pretty good. That should work pretty good. I usually cut these just slightly long. That way I can take little bits out until it fits in there nice and tightly. Also, at this point, you're probably going to want to spend some time getting this to lay flat, so we have a nice flat platform for the stone to sit on. To get this nice and flat, I think I'm going to solder it closed first. I don't always do that when I'm doing these kind of step bezels, but let's do that on this one, so it gets nice and flat. Alright, so make sure that it's sitting all the way at the bottom. That's important. Let's make a little rectangle out of some of these pieces of solder. So I'm going to flux this, and then I'm just going to kind of set it on top of these pieces of solder, and then heat from the outside, and that should draw the solder right up in there. In theory. So now let's make some circles, or actually half circles, but we'll make them circles first. Alright, so I think for these, I'm going to use this one on the bail making pliers, and we'll spin a few loops on this. And then we can cut off some half circles. Let's go over to the sawing area, and we'll saw some of these off to try and get them as close to half a circle as we can. Hopefully I'll be able to cut the mess over here out of the picture. One. There's two. Oops. Number 3 went on the floor somewhere. Alright, I'm going to file these in. Well, actually, first of all, let's make sure they're, since we made them into kind of a spring, make sure these guys are sitting flat. One thing I think I'm going to do that I didn't do in my drawing is this part up here. I'm not going to have it matching this. It's going to be going the opposite direction. So I'll have to make each of these earrings offset from each other, if that makes any sense. That looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to cut some small pieces of solder, and we'll hopefully be able to pick them in there. If you haven't seen pick soldering before, I have a video up there. It's worth watching, I think. It's one of those skills that once you learn it, it really makes things a lot easier. I'll show you the basics here, but you should watch the video to get the most, to get a little bit more in-depth explanation of how to do it. So you pick up a little bit of solder on the end of the pick here, heat the piece up to the soldering temperature, and then when you think you're about there, and you can watch the other solder joints, when they start to get shiny, if there are some previous solder joints. That's about when you pop it in there. Oops, I dropped the ball. I jumped the gun on that one because it had cooled off a little bit at that point. Oops. Okay, so earlier I made out of this flattened 12 gauge square wire, I made a couple of loops and I cut some off, and this is one of them. And so that's going to be, actually it'll be going this way, but I need to put a flat side on it too, so let's make sure it's like that. And I have a little bit of this left somewhere over there. Flattish spot on this. So I got plenty of solder here, so I think I can just flux this and pick up a couple of pieces and solder that on. Let's give that a try. I'm going to cut it off, not right up against there, but close, so that I can file the rest of the way to get a nice clean curve going on there. I should be able to just you can brace this against something if it helps you to file that way. Okay, now I'm going to do the tops and bottoms as if you did decide to do this as a solid closed box, make sure to drill a hole in it before you do that. Drill a hole in one of the pieces of sheet. Sometimes gases getting caught in closed spaces can act weird, so you don't want something, an unplanned disassembly, so to speak. Cut a little piece of this is 26 gauge silver sheet. I'll just take a little bit off right there. So let me cut a couple more pieces of solder because I want to make sure to have plenty. Okay, now let's just trim off the excess sheet here and file it flush. Okay, so you see it from the back it looks like a D. From the front it just looks like a half circle. So I want it to be kind of like that. Right about like that, I think. So let's see if we can get that soldered on there. These are definitely looking sort of Bauhausy. Bauhausy? Is that a word? Okay, so now I need to add a post to it, and I think what I'm going to do is let's push it into a magnesia block here. So nothing can move too much. Let me find that 20 gauge wire I have. There's a little bit of it. Alright, and I have some solder on the pad here, so I should be able to just pick it up on this. that, and then heat this whole thing, and I'm going to put it kind of right there, kind of where the center of the circle would be. It'll be kind of like that, the front, and on the back it'll look like that. I like that. Okay, I'm going to make a second one, and then I'll get these in the pickle, and then we'll clean them up and show you the final results at the end. Okay, I set one of them after I polished it up. I think it's kind of cool looking. Now let's do this other one. I just put the stone in there, but I haven't set it yet. So I do this a little differently than some. I use the flat side of my chain nose pliers as a bezel pusher. I'm going to start a little bit at the corners here, try and get that pushed down on the corners. This bezel's thin enough to where I don't have to do too much to deal with the corners. If I was using thicker bezel, I would file it a little bit thinner at the top corner there. That's a good way to deal with some of that excess metal. This last step is burnishing. I'm just going to rub that top edge. Alright. The last thing I'll do is I'll take a fine silicone abrasive wheel and just kind of shine up that top edge along the side of the stone there to make it look a little nicer. And then I'll get some pictures at the end. Alright, well that was the rectangular cabochon earrings with Marcasite, and I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And I would also love it if you would go check out the main channel page on my YouTube channel. You'll find that I have 460 plus YouTube videos now. I've been doing 3 per week for about 3 years, and that adds up to quite a few. Lots of projects, lots of advice, lots of skills. So check some of those out. Come back and make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. The other thing is, check out the video description down below. There's some important links there. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that community. There's the $5 silver supporter level, which is where you get all of my YouTube channel videos without any advertisements that YouTube puts on here. So that's the primary perk of that. And there's multiple levels above that with different perks that come along with it, like live chats and exclusive videos that are made just for Patreon. So check those things out. There's a link to my ebook, which is a great value at $35. It gives you access to, as well as extra information about all of last year's tutorials. And I think it's a useful tool to have a whole bunch of projects right at your fingertips, and a great way to support my channel if you're interested. The other thing is, there's a link to my merch store. That's where you'd go to get those nice design idea books I talked about at the beginning. I think they're a really useful tool to keep track of your projects in. So, all right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.